Well, let's bring in now former Chief of Staff to Bill Shorten and current Director of GXO Strategies Cameron Milner, and former Media Advisor to Scott Morrison and current Director at Headline Advisory Andrew Carswell. Welcome to both of you. Thank you very much for your time. Look, I just want to quickly show you some comments that both Peter Dutton and Greg Sheridan have made today in response to this issue that I've been speaking about. Hopefully those comments coming up in a moment from Peter Dutton and Greg Sheridan. Great.
An incredible individual. He's been given mission impossible by this Prime Minister because the Prime Minister's after a political outcome for what is obviously a lot of angst and difficulty within the left wing of his Labor caucus. And I think the Jewish community continues to remain shocked by the Prime Minister, who seeks to walk both sides of the street.
And let's have a look at Greg Sheridan's comment now.
This is a disgraceful, sensationalist and wicked stunt by the Albanese government, which is not only wrong in principle and bad morally, but threatens to politicise and debauch our own military.
Cameron Milner, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, the Labor government under Albanese and Wong, it was, disturbingly, positioned but right now it's disgraceful. Disgraceful after what they've done. I think the double standards we're seeing on display from the Labor left, when you have an innocent Australian citizen who is slaughtered and murdered in her own house, and yet the Foreign Minister can't go to her kibbutz months later, when we have wait over 100 days for it to be declared by the Australian government as a terrorist act. And unfortunately, yes, a tragic loss of an aid worker 6 months into a war, which has been apologised to for the Israeli army and Israeli government. The double standard on display is terrible from Labor, and it says an awful thing to the Jewish community in Australia, that Labor no longer has the support the way that Hawke did and others did, and historically has done, if the way Albanese and Wong are behaving going forward.
I mean, look, Andrew Carswell, Penny Wong in that letter that I've revealed the leaked details of tonight, saying that they're so alarmed by Benjamin Netanyahu's factual comment that these tragic accidents do happen occasionally in war. Andrew, how does she ignore Australia's own record on this issue?
Well, I think, Sharri, the true colours are being shown here. I mean, this is the position in the relationship between Australia and Israel that Penny Wong was longing for. She is not on the side of Israel. Her support for Israel has always been conditional. It has always been measured. It has always been very firmly in her view of what she thinks the facts are rather than what the facts are indeed. I mean, what was the Air Marshal Binskin going to find here that the Israeli government hasn't already put up their hand for and admitted? They have admitted serious fault here. They've admitted a catastrophic failure on behalf of two individuals. That has already been admitted. So sending someone here to try and sift through the wreckage and the rubble in Gaza is just a stunt.
Yes.
And sadly, it is using the unfortunate and grim death of an Australian for political and ideological gain. And the relationship between Australia and the Israeli community and the Australian government, the Albanese government, and the Jewish community here in Australia is in tatters. It really is. And we need some solid leadership from this point on to rebuild that relationship and get it to a point that should be between close friends, close allies, close partners.
And as I've reported tonight again, that the bilateral relationship now between Israel and Australia is at serious risk. It's at its lowest point in the Albanese government, which is saying something, mostly because of the hostility of this letter, the language, the inflammatory language. I've only reported some aspects here tonight on air, but the inflammatory language in that letter from Penny Wong and Richard Marles has really damaged relations. Israel will now have to decide whether or not it does cooperate with the Albanese government's insistence on having a special advisor, something that, as that international expert in the Australian said, is unprecedented. Now, Let's move on now to the boat arrival. It's a topic that I will come back to in more detail with Peter Jennings a bit later in the show. But the Albanese government is now dealing with its third illegal boat arrival since November. Cameron, as you well know, Labor has a history of rallying against offshore detention and boat turnbacks. Now they are dealing with, it looks like, the start of an influx, because in the past, the boats have tried to come to Australia, but they have been turned back. We've now actually had 3 reach the shores since November.
Look, and Labor's looking weaker and weaker on borders by the day. I mean, the third arrival, but goodness knows how many others have attempted to come since the Albanese government has essentially said that if you're an illegal person who's here, the High Court will welcome you and will give you aid. Don't put a tracker on us, it's okay. I mean, we've opened the sluice gates for the worst of the worst to be in our community, and that's appalling. But to then be weak on our borders as well is the double whammy, and that's what the Australian electorate's seeing, and it's toxic for Labor to be weak on borders.